that you're creating. If you want to go to the next slide. Projects come to us from a variety of sources. We've developed relationships in the nonprofit sector and with public agencies. My day job is with Smart Columbus and the Columbus Partnership, leading innovation initiatives. So we've got our feelers out, and we invite corporations to come to the table as skilled volunteers. We invite public agencies to come to the table to introduce us to their challenges, and then we go from there. So we not only tackle the problems that come to us, but we've also discovered that we've got really creative and insightful folks in our community that have solutions on their own. So one group developed a tip jar for Columbus artists, stylists, and bartenders, which was particularly effective during all of these virtual festivals that occurred over the summertime, to be able to throw some revenue towards these artists that haven't been able to get out there in their traditional methods. Next slide. Let's see what we have here. Quick snapshot of some of the community organizations we've worked with. Again, public sector, nonprofit, and I don't think we have any of the private sectors listed here, but again, really looking to engage with organizations that might have dipped their toe in the water of a technical solution and haven't quite figured out how to fully implement it, or they just have a real need and are very close to that need and can help articulate it, and then we help them sort of ideate around potential solutions and ways forward. And then the next slide is going to show our process. So I know we're going to talk quite a bit about design thinking. I'm really excited, Jeff, to learn more about your perspective at Encova. I've been working in innovation consulting for quite a while, and the space of design research and design thinking is something that this team of volunteers has fully embraced. So as you think of the process a project goes through, those two phases at the front end of problem identification and then design research have become really critical. Oftentimes, volunteers come together and they want to jump right into prototyping, but there's tremendous value in pausing and understanding the user needs, really looking at the landscape of stakeholders and engaging the right stakeholders in the process, and ideally building some empathy on what those needs are, and then letting those produce some hypotheses to test. And the next slide, oh, that's it. So I'll go ahead and share some videos towards the end so you can watch them later of what Can't Stop Columbus has accomplished over the last year, and some of the partners and some of the stories, which, you know, that's always the best part to see the impact in action. But we are here to help. We've got a team of what we call navigators that will be supporting Christina in filling any volunteer needs that she identifies along the way. And then we've got, you know, generally resources around marketing and communications and so on that we can come to the table with as we go as well. Christina will be part of a leads group that shares resources and best practices. And of course, we have a channel set up in our Slack community for use in managing this project. And we'll be here along the way to provide support. So really excited about this project and excited to learn more about what the needs are and how we're going to tackle this. So thanks, everyone.
She's going to try to call back in. For some reason, she got dropped.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I just got dropped too and had to rejoin.
Am I back on?
Yes, there you are. Great.
There you go.
I have no idea what happened. Sorry about that. That's too funny. So I don't know where I left off, but the bonus is that you have non-military community connecting with the military community. And I think that's just precious for all of the efforts, whether we're trying to raise funds or advocate for something, or just getting messages across, you know, on what the needs are. I think that that's going to really serve us well. And then as far as Can't Stop Columbus, I started Can't Stop Columbus as a one-person team. My time was limited because of the pandemic, so I limited myself to one project, and I would pop in on the e-commerce project and give support, and then I would also log in and see what kind of social media pushes. You know, sometimes getting the word out is the biggest task. And so I'm like, okay, I can do this. I can log in once in a while and share something on my social media. And for us, because we go back to these big companies or employers and all of our colleagues, you know, that's also a rich resource. When we want to get the word out, we just bring that social media push back to our companies and then ask people to help us spread that word. So I think that's going to serve us really well as well. And then on another note, just talking about how these projects are connected, even though they're separate and run autonomously. I have an example, a win. I work with the Buckeye Military Moms, and the Buckeye Military Moms, they support troops overseas. They send care packages, but they also send supplies and food to the VA. And they've been delivering supplies and food to the guardsmen who have been standing guard in our hospitals during this pandemic. So they do quite a bit, but their supplies were depleted because all of the supply channels were disrupted. So I went to an all-hands meeting one time when they were doing a demo on a solution that they had for scheduling volunteers. And as they went through the demo, there's this little piece of the app that I thought the Buckeye moms could use. And sure enough, we're testing it now. It worked just fine. So now they have a new supply channel that they can replenish their supplies with. But if I hadn't sat in and watched that demo, I wouldn't have seen it and I wouldn't have picked up on it. And every one of us will sit in on a demo and see something different. And to stay together, that's what optimizes those opportunities. Okay, so how this can work, So this is actually what it is. So imagine like each one of these tackles a problem. So whether it's identifying where the veterans are or providing transportation, if transportation is what's keeping the service from the provider apart, whatever that why is or whatever that challenge is, each one of these would tackle. And so all of these project teams would work autonomously. And then every once in a while, they check in with everyone to share, you know, some breakthroughs or some lessons learned. Each one has their own Slack channel to communicate with. The resource request is what Mackenzie was talking about. Whatever we need, you know, everyone kind of steps up to see what else we can do. You know, can we find a web designer? Do we have some content writers on hand? And the great thing is that just getting started, I've already been approached by 2 projects. One is the Can't Stop Me project that's in Slack already and part of Can't Stop Columbus. So they coach interviewing and they help, you know, transition from one job to the next. So they coach with that. And then they give interviewing practice and feedback. So that one is already in place. And so to leverage that for the military community, there might be just a couple steps that have to get, you know, implemented for it to work, like maybe, you know, something that changes the MLS to a civilian type role for the resume. So maybe there's a few steps in there, but that's, you know, some pretty low hanging fruit if all you have to do is insert a few steps and it applies to the military community. So they're waiting to help us with whatever we need. There's another project or organization called Operation Code. Operation Code is a group of volunteers who mentor either transitioning vets or military spouses into the tech industry. So they'll mentor them, they'll connect them with code schools, job fairs, career fairs, things like that, and none of it is of any cost to them, and they just kind of mentor them along and help them through that. So that's 2 project teams or 2 organizations that are already ready to help and willing to help. So we hadn't even kicked off yet, and we have that. So that's really, really great to have. And then we have regular check-ins. That's what keeps all of the projects connected. And then we've also seen a lot of opportunities for many of these project teams to get awarded grants and other assistance. So that's another plus and something that we could have at our disposal. So I am talking really fast because there's a lot of information we want to get to, and design thinking is a huge part of it. I'm going to go over to Jeff Martin to introduce this approach that we want to take with these project teams. Over to Jeff.
Thank you, Christina. First off, I'm Jeff Martin. I work at Encova Insurance. I'm the innovation strategist, where I lead different teams, or I shouldn't say lead, I facilitate different teams through the innovation process and to really try to do something new that creates value. And that's how we define innovation. It doesn't have to be something grand and new and creative. It's just the ability to do something new in the organization that's creating value. It could be as simple as changing a letter that gets sent, possibly to include different information and different ways to access things, to implementing brand new technology, and anywhere in between. But whenever we do that, we use the process of design thinking. And Christina and I were really thinking that as you look at what this team is, or the problems that these teams are going to face, they're really going to be all over the place. And there's not going to be simple answers to problems. They're not going to be as simple as a typo on a web page, most likely. The solutions aren't going to be obvious, and there's probably going to be a lot of different solutions that could really tackle the problem. And they're going to vary significantly, and the users who would be consuming the services are going to be very vast and different. And so design thinking really lends itself to those types of problems. As it was mentioned earlier, there's a lot of empathy that goes into this process, and really understanding your customers and what their specific needs are, and then tailoring your solutions to the problems based on those customer personas. And so that's what we're going to get into, just as a preview of what to expect if you're functioning on one of these teams. It's not meant to be an exhaustive lesson, and definitely in no way am I trying to get you to the point of being certified in it or anything like that, but it should give you a pretty decent idea of what a typical team would go through on a project. Like I said, design thinking, it is an iterative process where you really do seek to understand the customer first. You challenge some basic assumptions that people may have and really try to think outside of the box. And you're really trying to redefine problems very specific to those customers that you've attempted to understand. It really does attempt to identify alternative strategies and solutions that just aren't obvious. I mean, everyone's going to try to implement the obvious solutions, and most likely they've already tried and failed. And that's really why you're trying to go outside of the box and come up with some really creative and value-added solutions. It really manifests itself into five main phases. You really empathize with your customer or your user and figure out who they are at a very detailed level too. And then you want to define the problem and the challenges, the pain points that are there. And then you move into the ideation phase where you're brainstorming. You're just trying to think of anything you possibly can, and then you will vet them through different prototypes and test them out with your customers. Throughout this process, you're constantly getting customer feedback, and it's not an iteration end to end. At any one of these phases, you can jump back to a previous phase and revisit and redefine based on something you've learned in another phase. And so you really do start to move from understanding to exploring different options to being able to materialize something that provides value. And that's really the goal. And to do that as quickly as possible with a lot of customer interactions and feedback. So when you start, you empathize with your customers. You try to gain an understanding of their problems by observing, then engaging, and then really immersing yourself into that process. There are many different tactics that you can use to do that. But at the end of the day, you come up with basically an empathy map, and you figure out what your customers are hearing, what they're seeing, what they're feeling and thinking, what they're saying and doing. You understand what their pain points are, and you understand the benefits that they're trying to accomplish. And this is just one example of the way you can graphically display this of all your findings in the empathy phase. After the empathy phase, you're really going to spend some time and define your specific problem. You may start with a very generic problem. I think, Christina, you mentioned that there may be a service provider who has a problem with the people who want to use that service can't find transportation to use that service. Well, that's a very generic problem. You would then want to go through and define that and start to figure out what are the individuals, what are their transportation challenges, what are their pain points, looking at the insights, keeping it very, very strong language, using their emotions, once again, what they're feeling, what they're thinking, what they're saying. And you would create what we call how might we statements, one way to figure that out, and to create point of view statements. So in this example, this is an insurance example. And you would detail out the point of view. Once again, the customer is very specific. It's a divorced professional mother of 2 grade school children. They need to have a seamless, non-intimidating, simple, and fast, hassle-free auto claims experience, which is a mouthful. But basically what we're saying is, hey, when they wreck their car, they need their car fixed and they need to be back in their daily routine as fast as possible. And then this meaningful insight, she doesn't want to rely on her ex-husband for help in negotiating with the insurance companies, providing transportation assistance for the children, or enabling him to spend more time with the children beyond his court-decreed custodial limitations. And this is an actual real point of view statement used in the insurance industry. I forget which company actually came up with it, but I mean, this is the detail in which people go to. And you can kind of see how that empathy comes through and those strong emotions come through so that you understand the motives and things of that nature. From there, like I said, you start to define multiple solutions to that problem, or how might we solve things from different points of view or different angles, so to speak. So you could say, how might we improve that claims processing to promote trust and openness and fairness for the divorced professional mother, so that they don't feel the need to negotiate or seek assistance in negotiating that claim resolution. That's much different. That's a much different solution than the next one that talks about providing transportation needs from time to time, or I'm sorry, transportation needs from the time of the incident to the time of repair, so that mother, her schedule and her children's schedules aren't interrupted any more than possible. If you notice, that's still the same problem, but now we're trying to solve it in multiple ways because that initial problem was very ambiguous. It had many, many solutions that you could tackle. And that's really what, at the beginning, all that understanding and that defining, that's what it's really trying to do. And it's a lot different than traditional problem solving. Once you've defined that, you basically take each one of those how might we statements and ideate over. Just have brainstorming sessions. You know, you're really transitioning from exploring those problems now to exploring those solutions. You want to generate radically different ideas. You're definitely focused on quantity over quality. You will get to the quality and start to narrow down what the best ones are, but at first, it's really all about quantity. No idea is dumb. And you really want to go outside of the box. Avoid kind of those obvious, you know, here's traditionally what everyone has tried to tackle this problem before. Ideate also uses the concept of diverging and converging. And so, like I said, when you're going for quantity, you're trying to diverge. You're trying to come up with as many different ideas as possible. And then when you converge, you're trying to narrow them back down, and you're trying to say, what do we think has the best opportunity to work, or whatever your criteria may be. Sometimes you pick what you think is most obvious, what you think is most radical, what you think is safest. There's a lot of different ways you can converge back down to just a couple of solutions to try. Some of the ways you can do divergent thinking, I don't want to go too far into it, but you have traditional brainstorming, you have got role storming and brandstorming. Role storming is saying something like, well, if I was, head of Apple, what would Steve Jobs do basically to solve this problem? Brandstorming is the same thing, but looking at it from a business perspective. How would Google solve this problem, or how would Amazon solve this problem? You can also look at it from a six hats mentality, and it basically that means just taking around and looking at just the facts and brainstorming the facts. Brainstorm all the feelings, brainstorm the controls, the creativity, looking at it from a positive side, a negative side. What could possibly go wrong with this? All of those are different divergent thinking tactics. So after you've converged and selected a couple to move forward with, you really move into the prototyping stage, where we're really trying to create something with that physical form that we can start to expose and let someone interact with, some of our customers interact with. And we're really looking for rapid feedback. And there are a lot of iterations here in this prototype and testing phase or phases. You really want to start with low fidelity objects, a quick sketch, and then moving to more and more complex things until you get to a working prototype. But with each phase, you will sit there and go through a test iteration as well, where you're trying to gather feedback, you're refining those solutions, you're adding a little bit more functionality to them throughout the process. And then the idea is, at some point, you'll get to what you would call a minimal marketable product, a minimal viable product, whatever that minimal product is that starts to add value to your customers that you can release into the production environment, either in a pilot or a full-blown production deployment. And that's pretty much the process. And then even once it's in that production step, you're still analyzing it. You're making sure that it's successful, and if not, you're bringing it back and starting this process all over again. I know that was a lot of material. It really wasn't meant to be a exhaustive course on design thinking, but it should hopefully get you excited and expose you to how we're going to tackle this, and why it's a lot different than what a lot of people traditionally do to solve problems. Are there any questions or comments just over design thinking in general? All right. If not, we're gonna bring it in for just a general discussion. I know we wanted to leverage chat to start this. We're hoping we don't want everyone to talk at once. So if you would just want to type in the chat, hey, I've got a question, go ahead and do that. And Christina, are you going to moderate that? Did you want me to? How did you want this to work?
Yeah, you can keep going, Jeff.
All right.
Yeah. I think Elisa Bennett is on from Amazon, and she had a topic already that she wanted to bring up.
Yeah, let's turn it over to Elisa.
Hi, thank you so much. Yeah, definitely don't want to pull away from the current conversation. It's actually my first time here on the call, so thank you so much for Christina for inviting me. But Elisa Bennett here, I sit on the Global Military Affairs team. And I am specifically looking for transitioning service members to apply for the Amazon Military Skill Bridge program. A little bit of history about this program. So Amazon's a company, the DoD Skill Bridge approved company, meaning we can take in transitioning service members into a variety of different roles at the company. And our goal is to train them and help them adjust to the new culture. So when they transition out, our goal is to make sure that they have a job lined up to make that transition as smooth as possible. So that's the Amazon Military Skill Watch program, and we're looking for transitioning service members to apply. But I've noticed that in the Ohio area, there doesn't seem to be a lot of applications of candidates, and we have interviews just around the corner. And so any suggestions on ways to engage with transitioning service members, I'm all ears. I've definitely have reached out to some of the local installations and kind of heard crickets. I don't know if you guys have engaged with installations before. It can be hit or miss at times. But that's about that program specifically. But on the team that I sit on as well, we also obviously focus in on recruiting veterans across the organization, whether it's AWS, tech, or non-tech, and then military spouses as well. So I'm more than happy to talk about that as if you guys have any questions for me. But specifically, look into this group to see if there's any thoughts on or ideas on how do we engage the transitioning service military community to partake in the Skill Watch program. And if you guys have any questions about that, I'm more than happy to answer.
Lisa, this is Mark Holland. And just one question. Have you engaged with the National Labor Exchange for Veterans at all? I don't know how successful that site is, but jobs are posted there for veterans and for military.
Yeah, so I have reached out to several different DOL contacts. Haven't had a very much success in like the response rate. I do have a meeting with one representative, but nothing for the Ohio region. But yeah, I definitely have been like, I've been reaching out to the Department of Labor and the local installations and making phone calls and just haven't been seeing a lot of traction.
So if I could step in, so this is just that, you know, Elisa's got these opportunities, but it's not getting to the veterans who need that opportunity, you know, that they're just not meeting. So that's exactly the why. And so in what we were introducing, a project team would take that why and start to brainstorm and have like a multitude of ideas on how to identify them, how to locate them. I know Niels is on the phone right now and he has VetTV. VetTV is a great connection. And there are others as well. But this is the type of why that a project team would take a hold of and find a way to bring it all in and say, okay, what's the best way we can come up with that'll funnel all of those candidates in, and they're easy to find. I know I've heard of job fairs that were taking place to help the military community, but they couldn't find the military community to attend. They could find all these employers, but they couldn't find the veterans and the military spouses to attend. So this is exactly the type of problem that a project team would take, and maybe they come up with a directory of some sort, or maybe they find a directory like Niels's and kind of pivot it so that it works in different ways. I don't know. I mean, it's just a matter of doing that whole design thinking that creates a good experience for both Amazon and for the applicant. But that's a really good example of a why that we would want a project team to take on.
Yeah, Alyssa, this
Go ahead.
sorry,
Go ahead,
Alyssa. I was just empathizing with what you were saying because we, for instance, one of the guys that's on our advisory board, he was the executive officer at NAS Pensacola, right? Every aviator, Marine Corps, and Navy come through this, and for us to have a conversation with the folks on base to help, you know, get more jobs in front of and more tools and resources and our contacts and connections in front of veterans. When we went out and spoke with them, it was a little bit of a deer in the headlights. You know, they're used to doing the basic blocking and tackling. And so we really got nowhere. So we decided, you know, that we just need to do it on our own, and with people that are not GSX, you know, employees necessarily, in the families and or the transition support, you know, department at the facility. We just have to kind of you know, we have to win the mission. We have to, you know, we have to complete the mission and just do it, no matter who's in our way. We couldn't even get through if we had the XO to help out, right? To say, hey, listen, I want the meeting. So we had the meeting, but we never got anywhere. So that doesn't mean we don't want to work with them in the future. We always will. There are doors.
I lost
We
it.
have to do
Yeah.
things like everyone on this phone calls or this conference calls, just doing.
Yeah,
alacrity.
yeah, definitely, you know, working with third parties, like having our Heroes Corporate Fellowship Program, just so you guys are aware, so they kind of are looked as a competition with what we're doing with Amazon Military SkillBridge because they have their own SkillBridge approved program. So, but with them being a third party, it did add a layer of complexity with the administration work and engagement with the talent. And so that's why Amazon became its own SkillBridge approved company through the Department of Defense. So that way we can engage directly with the installations, but we're coming across that issue again where like the third party is like maybe that transition office, like that middle person that just it's kind of the barrier. And like, how do we, and so what some of the things that we're figuring out, or I'm currently thinking about is, you know, how do we get hold of like gung-ho or encourage military leaders, like senior enlisted leaders that want to take care of their people, and how can we then work around the transition offices, the third parties are in the way, and do our roles or webinars to learn more about these opportunities. And then also educating these leaders of the benefit of programs like Amazon Military SkillBridge is to help their transitioning service members. Like, why wouldn't you want to help them out, and how, and like, you know, sign off on the paperwork and give them the knowledge base to take part in opportunities like this to help make that transition as smooth as possible. So that's just on a larger scale. That's like, I think, a conversation that's picking up, especially with SkillBridge. The DoD and I think some Congress folks are picking it up because due to COVID, there was obviously a decline in the unemployment rate for service members. And so, oh, go ahead.
Lisa, I'm sorry.
Yes.
I'm going to interrupt you for a second just to kind of come up a couple of levels. So like going back to what we're trying to do here is build these project teams to solve these problems. Would you be available to be like a subject matter expert in these challenges?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I'd love to hear. I'd love to hear everyone's thoughts on you know, what this approach to solving these types of problems, and then, you know, the other aspect of having, you know, every project team would work autonomously and solve different problems, but they still stay connected so that you kind of optimize everyone's effort. So, I mean, Neil, what are your thoughts on the approach that we're proposing?
I agree 100%. I mean, I know that we started VetCV because of a problem that Jeff Miller had, or Congressman Miller. He was the chair of the VA committee at the time on the Hill. And we saw an opportunity for us to repurpose technology that we built for the healthcare space for hospitals and health systems and for physicians. And we could fairly quickly, and I don't want to say inexpensively, because we pumped a couple of $1 million. That's nothing to you guys, I know, but for me, you know, it's a lot of money for a little guy like me, you know, to make this happen. You know, it's a rounding error for all of you, I know, but so I think you just have the right, you know, you have to have the right people on the bus, and that's us, people like us, I guess. And we got to work together, the smalls and the bigs, and just go solving it, because it all matters. The way I look at it is that it really matters. It matters to the veteran and the family, right? And if there are obstacles in the way for them to have the control and the resources delivered up to them, even resources they didn't know that they should use or have available to them, that's what we want to try to help with. What we built is just, we do some things that other people don't, but I think over time, we're just going to be we'll be a vehicle, a delivery vehicle for resources and ideas that we connect back out to our friends in the network, Amazon, Christina, you know, Loud and Clear, the Veterans Museum, to gain donations or to whatever. Suicide is a big thing, obviously, as well. for us, we're doing some things on the AI side that are pretty interesting in that. But then the question is, do we deploy it? Because we also
What
want
about
to be
you,
respectful
John?
of privacy.
Sorry, Neil.
No,
What
it's
about you,
okay.
John? You're AEP and a military resource group. Is this something that a military resource group like yours would be interested? I think Huntington is on the line too, so I'd be curious to get your insights or your thoughts on this. Over.
Yeah, John Popelka, I'm with Mark Conwell and Paige, I think is out there, all Huntington. I co-lead the Military Business Resource Group. I think the design approach is spot on. I lead an innovation team at Huntington, so I think anytime we can better empathize and find out what's going on, it's good. Ohio Department of Veteran Services did a survey not too long ago on the employment side, and the number one pain point for employers is help me find the military personnel. I want to hire them, I don't know where to go. So we got a population that George Bush Foundation says is underemployed by some factor, and that's data shown up in many places. So we have a challenge on the demand side of underemployment. And we have a challenge on the supply side, which is show me where the military spouses and service members are. And so, despite a lot of great efforts with lots of different organizations, it's still a problem that hasn't been solved yet, which means that's super interesting for a project team to tear into. So I think the approach is great. I love the self-forming team, the asynchronous work approach. I think it's a smart way to. We clearly don't have the solve. If we did, we wouldn't be talking about this. So. It's time to try a different way.
Mark, Paige,
Yeah.
I know Huntington has a pretty robust team, right? You guys are pretty active in the community.
Yeah, I think, that's the age-old question of, like John said, how do you find the veterans? I work in HR, so I think I have a little bit of a different perspective. I've been to many veteran job fairs, both on the HR side and even when I was, transitioning out of the military. My story is a little bit different because I took more of a circuitous route. But, it's a challenge, and there's no one quick answer. What I've seen, and when I talk to veterans at various job fairs, they just don't go. And the reason why, I think you can come up with a lot of different reasons. But when talking to veterans, when they come to a job and you don't have anything for them, that's going to make them less likely to attend future job fairs. So how do you attract them? If I had a silver bullet, I'd be infinitely wealthy, I think. But there's definitely a challenge. But I think groups like this could certainly, help try to solve those problems. At Huntington, we use a hybrid approach of problem solving. John knows this better than I do. All of the different tools and resources we have, whether it's a 5 whys or, I like what I was hearing today about, design thinking. How do we use multifaceted approaches to solve these problems? Over.
Right.
Hi,
Yeah,
Christine. You were mentioning from AEP. I really appreciate you inviting us to this. So I think it's awesome. And we do have a pretty strong resource group. Of course, with COVID, things kind of went south a little bit, and I think we didn't get a lot of traction. Last year we did some things, but we certainly have a whole team of people, at the ready to, I think, jump in. I think it's kind of pent up anxiety to kind of get out there and help, but even more this year, so you could probably even leverage some of that stuff. I was the chair last year. Each year we kind of rotate, so we got a couple new chairs in those positions now, but certainly, I'm certainly connected to those guys very well. In that team and work with diversity and inclusion, that team, because our resource groups are a spin-off of our diversity and inclusion chief officers. So that's kind of how we're set up, and we go and what we've done in our resource group is we have it, across the United States, all the different 11 states that we work in are the different opcos. We have leaders, or those military resource leaders in each one of those states, to help us, and then they all report up to the chair. That's how we kind of typically do it. But I think we're just kind of chomping about. This is great stuff. Love the design thinking. We've done it as well. We certainly have an AR/VR arm in our teams too. So that's really cool stuff. Just kind of like what Niels was talking about. But it's definitely an opportunity, and just trying to figure out where we can jump in and help where we can. So we could certainly chat about that further.
Hey, Christina, sorry, one more thing I thought of I wanted to add. Why I like this approach so much is, from at least what I said, others could disagree. There's a lot of data about this. In fact, just this morning I read a study that was done about the state of veteran transition, etc. I'm not aware of any initiatives that are taking an empathetic interview approach and talking to individual service members and really getting into their stories. A couple of years ago, I was with a group that we got the green light to talk to service members at bases, through National Guard and Reserve units. It just didn't happen for a variety of reasons. But that's the unique wrinkle in the design thinking approach, is really getting very intimate and trying to figure out at a detail level what's going on as opposed to the macro stuff we're doing. So I think it's value added.
Thanks, John. Al, we haven't heard from you. Al, you've been at this for a while, right? You're one of our biggest advocates, our military community. Any thoughts, insights, any coaching?
No, I totally commend everyone's efforts and willingness to address a situation that has been plaguing this community for a long time, which is trying to conquer the civilian-military divide or military-civilian divide. It just seems like, from my experience, it's always, we want to do something, but we don't know how. And I think with timing and COVID and the use of the acceptance of this new technologies, it's given a chance for people to kind of think outside the box. So, a lot of the things I'm hearing are some things that have been tried in the past, a lot of lessons learned. It's just a matter of getting the right collection of people, putting together a solid team, and executing strategy the way it needs to be executed. So I know, Bill, you're a former public affairs officer, so you can kind of, elaborate on some of the challenges as it relates to protocol and trying to get into the transition assistance programs, so on and so forth. So what are your thoughts as it relates to how to overcome the engagement between, the civilian community and the military?
Well, I think the biggest challenge is we as the veterans have got to take it up on ourselves to solve that problem. There's, 0.5% serve in the military of the American population, and very few in the general population know a veteran or have a family member who is a veteran. So they've got, some idea or stereotype or preconceived notion of what a veteran is, and in many cases, as many of you probably know or have seen, the preconceived notion is that a veteran is a broken homeless person or a drunk or somebody with PTS with a hair trigger on the verge of exploding. So we've got to dispel those bad stereotypes, and how we do that is also the other part of the challenge. So part of it is community engagement and finding out the power wheels or the networks or what have you within the area veteran service organizations or groups that veterans migrate to, and how we can leverage them to help either inform or create awareness about some of the opportunities that may come out of an effort like this. And Jeff, the design methodology, great job on presenting that. That's taught at the Command and General Staff College and the Army War College, and defining the problem and coming up with a solution is the critical part is defining the problem, and then the convergent divergent thinking, I think, is a great way to look at it. And if you're going to fail quickly, and then go back and try and reset and not waste a whole lot of resources on a failed attempt. So I guess that's kind of what we're looking at with some of the programs we have here at the National Veterans Memorial and Museum. Is, you know, how do we break out of Columbus, Ohio, because we're a national organization, and we've just now gotten a list of all the veteran service organizations in all 50 states down to the county level. And that was a labor of love, and fortunately we got some great volunteers who helped out with that. So that will help us be able to highlight some opportunities and programs and events that may be of interest for veterans outside of Central Ohio and outside of Columbus.
Bill, this is Niels. You mentioned VSOs. We have a list of about, I don't know how, I think it's about 17,000 VSOs, you know, everyone from a church group all the way up to large VSOs. I'd be glad to share that with you if you want it.
Awesome. Yeah, because, you know, some, like, we've got this Ulster program at Ohio State University, and it's graduate level education and a leader certificate for veterans. We're able to provide scholarships for some who don't have any college, and they're still getting graduate level education. And, you know, how do we share that great opportunity outside of Ohio and outside of Columbus? So yeah, that'd be awesome if we could get that list.
Yeah, I'll connect with you on LinkedIn, and then we can share my emails in the chat as well. So
okay, great.
Can I just add one more point? I think that John mentioned something, and it was really interesting. He was talking about the job fairs. Was that John that was talking about that? The job fairs you attend, and then the veteran shows up, and they don't have, there isn't a job for them. It kind of takes the wind out of their sails.
That was me, Niels.
That was Mark.
Okay. Mark, okay, yeah, Mark. I think that struck me when you said that, and it never occurred to me. But that's real, right? I mean, that's what happens to somebody. You go and you're all excited, and then there's no job. What do we do with it? So I'd be interested in exploring maybe a little bit further. Is there a way that when they do show up to the job fair, when that does happen, is there a way we can deploy technology to help keep that plate spinning for them, even when they leave? Like, hey, there may not be something here, but, you know, whoever you met, let's stay in touch, you know, through a channel. We can, you know, think about some, you know, one component could be through something we do, or collaborate, or create a network, so that they wouldn't walk away. We may not have something right now, but hey, you know, since we have this, or here's a tool that'll keep things going for you. And as soon as we have something, you're going to be notified, or whatever. Not just through a regular job board, but
Neil, I'm gonna step in. Sorry, we're running so short on time. And I just want to get through a few more things. But you're right, that hard stop takes the wind out of their sails. And there's several scenarios like entrepreneurship. Somebody wants to start their own business, they go to an organization, and they don't get the response that they're looking for, and so the wind is out of their sails. So definitely one of those problems we need to solve. I want to go on to next steps and just be respectful of everyone's time. So there are others, right now, there are other opportunities to support the military, and I know Colonel Butler's on the line, and just at a high level, if you could just explain the needs that are going to be coming up that we might be able to handle in groups, through our groups, with all of the events planned for Memorial Day weekend.
Yeah, so Memorial Day weekend, it should be a packed weekend. We always have a lot of volunteer requirements in and around any of the national holidays to place flags. And we've got close to 2,000 flags to stick in the lawn and around the museum. So that takes a core of a platoon's worth of volunteers and the better part of the day to get those set up and lined up and make sure they're not too deep so the flags are touching the ground. So that's always a a need anytime, you know, that we got Flag Day or Memorial Day or Veterans Day or 4th of July. We welcome any volunteers that are willing and able to do that. But on that whole weekend, we're working with A.D. Thorough, Harley Davidson, and Reichert Automotive Group to restart what we had planned last year was a Rolling Thunder motorcycle ride, because the last year that they were going to do it in DC was in 2019. So for those who are not motorcycle enthusiasts, I'm not myself, but that is anywhere from 200,000 to 300,000 motorcyclists converge on DC, the National Mall, for a ride to never forget POWs and missing in action. So last year we had probably close to 30,000 motorcyclists lined up, and then of course COVID hits, and we can't get any of the permits to do that, nor do we want to do it. But this year we think we'll be in a position where we can, and so the group is moving forward with that. That whole weekend from Thursday through Monday, we'll have the Wall That Heals at the museum. So that's a 3/4 scale replica of the Vietnam War Memorial. We'll need some volunteers to help set that up. But then part of the requirement is that we have docents and guards present 24/7 that entire weekend to help either guide people to the wall, or to find a particular panel or a particular serviceman or woman who was killed in Vietnam. So that will be a need for that weekend. Saturday, we plan on a Gold Star family candlelight vigil with about the 300 or so Filipino Gold Star families. So we'll need some volunteers to assist with that. And then Monday will be our Memorial Day ceremony. So we expect, several hundred people at that. We'll need some volunteers to, wayfind and help the guests get to their seats and get to the right place, right time, without, to pass out water, or the help monitor folks for the heat if they're getting too hot up on the roof. So that'll be an action-packed weekend for us.
So just another way to support. So BRGs, can easily, a group like, I know the Buckeye Military Moms are going to step in and help out with this. So it's just another way to support the military community short term. So next up, thanks for sticking it out with me. I know we're running over. I'm going to send a follow-up packet. It'll have, what you've seen today, and some more information from Can't Stop Columbus, and some other stuff we'll throw in on how to join. And then just watch for follow-up meetings and let us know some other challenges. We talked about employment, a little bit about transportation, but there's so many others that we could tackle, and maybe identify some low-hanging fruit and get some help out there right away. And then consider leadership opportunities. I know Jeff Martin works with me at Incova, and he's generously offering his time too to help keep all of these projects together and coordinated. But it's going to take quite a few leaders. And so just think about the type of role you'd like to play. Is it on a project team, which is totally valuable and fine, and we're excited to have you. But if you'd like a little bit more, representing the entire program, please reach out to us. But until then, just look for the packet, and we look forward to continuing these conversations. Thank you all very, very much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christine.
Sorry, Christine. I know we should have taken a picture. We should have taken a quick snapshot, but thank you very much. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Yep. Check your email, Christina.
All righty.
Thank you. What you're doing is awesome. Just incredible.
Thank you.
Kudos, Christina. Good job.
Yeah. Great.
John, thanks, Mark. You got the smile and the compliments. Oh my goodness. How do they stand being next to you?
Well,
thanks, Mark. You can always count on you.
All right, thanks, Christina. Great job.
Thank you,
Bye, everyone.
Butler.
Bye. Nice meeting you, everyone.
Again. Mark, do you need money for a haircut?
funny, sir.
I'm just jealous. I don't have any flow.
Maybe I'll grow it to donate to Locks of Love.
Yeah, do it.
That
Take you up on it.
I don't think I've ever seen you with your hair that long. That's so funny. But it grows.
First, I couldn't figure out who it
long,
was.
right?
The picture and the name weren't matching up in my mind. I was like, it's not Mark Conwell.
I think I've had one
Well, would
haircut,
say, you know.
maybe two since coronavirus, so that's part of it.
Bye, everybody. Have a great
Thanks,
weekend.
Great
See you
weekend.
again.
See you. See ya.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Have a
Thanks,
great
Dan.
weekend.
Great
See you
weekend.
again.
See you. See ya.
Bye, everyone.